Fieros and story time with me, Fieros Reborn. Here we are, the daily news of Fieros. Fieros Reborn. Ba-ding! Let's get a bit more light on the subject. Hello, and welcome to Fieros' story time with me, Fieros, on the channel Fieros Reborn. I'm being reborn every single moment. That was one moment, that's gone. Now I'm being reborn again. That moment's gone. Now I'm being reborn again. That moment's gone. Now I'm being reborn. See how I get more and more reborn as I get reborn? Anyway. Okay. Alright, let's focus. I've got into a bit of a silly mood because I just showed a friend of mine the Chinese fart torture video, which is one of the first videos on this channel. And it's quite silly. And it made me laugh when I watched it. But let's get back into serious mode because this is a Fieros story time video. Okay. I got a new thing for my phone, a case. Yeah, I'm trying to avoid talking about things. All right, let's thing. Focus. I just had a curry and a tissue. Okay, that's enough. Now look, I've got orange juice here. What do you think of that? Okay, fine, I'll do the thing. Right, so we've spoken about Ward 12 extensively. Quickly get you up to speed. If this is your first video, my name's Fieros. It's not really Fieros, but I call myself Fieros. All right. My real name is Ross, but I call myself Fieros because I think that's fun. Yeah. And when I was 18, I had a girlfriend and a band. The girlfriend broke up with me. Well, she cheated on me. She cheated on me. Yeah. She cheated on me, that little bitch. Motherfucker of a bitch. She cheated on me. And I was upset with that. And we broke up. It was mutual because it wasn't going to go anywhere from that point onwards, you know. She was seeing another guy. Then around that same time, one of the key people in my band split up from the band, so it was just a three-piece, so that was more difficult. Although we did record a single, which was good, professionally recorded single, so we were very pleased about that. I had this job at this restaurant called the Outback Steakhouse. It was in Staines. I met this guy. His name was Charlie. He pursued me. I ended up going out with him. I just wanted to try and experiment with my sexuality, but basically we had one night of experimentation, and then something it turned into a relationship without me really kind of considering whether I wanted it to or not. And in fact, I didn't want it to, but I felt like do you know what? I think it was because I'd been broken up with because someone had cheated on me. And I guess I was just desperate by that point, and I didn't want to put, this is something I consciously thought actually, I didn't want to put someone else through the pain of a breakup, because I'd just been through a breakup. Yeah, so I think it was like, and also there's a selfish angle as well, which was I just kind of couldn't deal with the guilt of breaking up with someone. So I stayed in a relationship that I didn't actually want to be in, and I didn't enjoy, and in fact was the worst relationship I have ever had in my whole life. I stayed with him for 2 years. I lived with him. During that time I went to uni, and then I quit uni, partly to do with his influence on me because he wanted me to stay with him all the time. He didn't want me to move into Reading after the first year, because I was going to move in with friends from my uni in a shared house, but my boyfriend wanted me to live with him instead, and that made things really difficult because it meant that I had to commute to Reading every day, and I didn't have Well, I could have used the car, I suppose, but I didn't want to use the car because petrol or something. I don't know, but I ended up using my bike to get a train, and um, yeah, I think I didn't want to use the car because I was about environmentally friendliness at that time. So that's probably why I didn't. I was thinking, why didn't I just use the fucking car? That's really weird. Why I didn't just drive. Hmm. It must have been self-imposed. I think it was self-imposed that I decided I didn't want to drive because, um, well, also no, I don't know. Yeah, it must have been because I didn't want to, because I was very, very strong on my environmentalism, and I really wanted to cut out all um, negative carbon emissions, whatever, emissions bad. Being a bad environmental person, I wanted to stop that, so I decided that I would ride my bike. And that was actually really draining and really stressful. So I rode my bike to the train station, got on a train. So I took the bike on the train, and it wasn't one of those fold-up bikes. It was a heavy bike, so I had to like lift it over the stairs and the bridge every time, um, and then get there, ride a bit further when I got to Reading, and then have my long day at uni. I was also doing like, well, by the second year, I wasn't really doing anything much extracurricular wise. I might have been still doing my radio show, but I'd cut everything out because I just couldn't deal with the stress, and I was just going to focus on my art course. But previously, I'd been doing an open mic night. I'd been doing campaigning in different social justice type of campaigns and environmental campaigns to raise awareness. And I was in the debate society, and I was going to like extra philosophy discussions and stuff, and I even set up my own little society, which was the stand-up comedy society, which didn't last very long because I realised that I had again overburdened myself with too many fucking activities and responsibilities. So, but that was good actually. I forgot about that, and I've just remembered about it. But yeah, I set up a little. It was just a little group of people who were interested in doing stand-up comedy and watching stand-up comedy. It was very small. It was like maximum sort of 6 or 7 people showed up, and that's at a push, and that's probably just me stretching it. It's probably more like 3 or 4. I remember me, this girl, this other guy, this big guy. Maybe no, maybe there was 5, 6, or 7. All right, maybe 5, 6, or 7 people. I'm not sure. Maybe 8 maximum showed up for that. But that was my intuition or my inspiration, whatever you call it, my idea to set up a stand-up comedy society, and then we did it for a few weeks, and then I went, ah, oh, you lot just do it by yourselves. But I was the one who was running it, so it didn't happen anymore after that, which is a shame. But yeah, so the commute I was talking about was very stressful. Yeah, here's another point actually. These are some bits I haven't fully picked up on from my uni days. So there was this girl. She was in a wheelchair, one of those motorized wheelchair things, and I can't remember what exactly her condition was, but her legs were paralyzed. She couldn't really move. Could she move them at all or not? I don't think she could move them at all, actually. So she had that. She lived in these kind of purpose-built disability kind of student halls that were all on the ground floor. No, were they all on the ground floor? I can't fucking remember. They all had ensuite bathrooms, and it was like specially made for people with different needs, shall we say. Different needs. Yeah, and so she and I were good friends. She was American, and she became friends with my partner at the time as well. But then it became apparent that we had a crush on each other. So yeah, I always found her physically attractive, having a beautiful face, and her lovely personality. She was an amazing person. She was an interesting person. You know, So we got along really well, and I found her attractive. The wheelchair thing really didn't bother me at all, actually. It really didn't bother me at all. It bothered her more than me, actually. And we did end up going to consummate our relationship after I'd broken up with my partner. Um, but she got kind of self-conscious about her legs. And it really wasn't a problem for me at all. I was really enjoying it. But she was very self-conscious, and she felt ugly and stuff. And so we just didn't go all the way. It was what it was. It was a bit of a frustrating interaction for me because um, it was kind of like right at the last minute she just decided that it just felt wrong or something. So I was like, okay, well, that sucks. And it was kind of strange that it had even happened. Like, I hadn't gone in with those intentions, and then I think I just gone in kind of to spend some time with her in the evening, and that's where it went to. And for the most part, it was really nice up until the last minute, where things got kind of. She was just so insecure and so kind of felt unworthy. I think was it. It was. She felt sort of sexually unattractive, and I think she had this kind of feeling of self-disgust or something because, oh yeah, now I remember her dad was very abusive to her, and it seemed to revolve also around her disability. So she would be called names and just treated badly, and it seemed to be based on the fact that she was not physically able, which was really harsh and really cruel. So she had this kind of very low self-esteem about her body sexually as well. So yeah, it was going well, and it was lovely up until that point, but then we just couldn't go any further. And I feel like that was also the end of our relationship because I mean, we stayed friends for a while, but not for much longer, maybe a few 6 months or so, because after that point I'd stopped going to Reading Uni. When I broke up with my partner, I also quit uni. I think I'd already quit uni. I'd quit uni first, and then I broke up with him. Yeah. Anyway, so that was a bit of a mess. Actually, that time period is all very messy. Like, I don't actually know exactly what point I broke up with my partner. I feel like I broke up with him about 5 times or 6 times, and I'm not sure which of them actually stuck. But one of them stuck, but I can't remember what it was, for example, that I said specifically to end it. I don't know. I don't know how it happened. I remember that I was just really trying to break up with him for about a month, and I felt like I was kind of trying to get this message across to him that I didn't want to be with him anymore, and that I hadn't wanted to be with him for a long time. And then somehow he kept trying to persuade me to go back with him, and I ended up saying yes, or it just happened that I gave in, whatever, because he kept saying he was going to change and stuff, and then like 5 minutes later, it'd be back to the same sort of argumentative situations that I wasn't enjoying. Um, he was so controlling and possessive and manipulative, even passive aggressive. What I realized afterwards was that the way he had manipulated me was mainly by suggesting topics. So he wouldn't do it directly. So he'd kind of it's like he was always sort of pointing my thoughts in certain directions, if that makes sense, by the way that he was asking questions or the things that he was talking about. So it would always be like pointing towards getting him what he wanted and to maneuver my thinking towards what he wanted. So, yeah, it was so subtle, and I only realized it afterwards how, like, over a period of time, basically my whole life direction had started to focus around what he wanted me to do, where he wanted me to be. And it took a while to kind of realize how that had happened, like how my life had become about. My life wasn't even my life anymore. My life was the life that he wanted me to have. So yeah, that was a head fuck, and that was the beginning of my break from my previous personality, like big time break, as in I broke up not only with him, but I broke up with my own self. I broke up with this kind of ego thing, and um, I don't know, I just became a completely different person immediately. Uh, yeah. Um, right. Okay. So we broke up. Then me and this girl had a thing. Then, ah, then I came back here. I remember writing poetry. I used to write a lot of poetry, and I used to write songs and poetry all the time. And I kind of miss those days because um, the way I write poetry and music and stuff these days, it feels a bit kind of like I don't really care anymore. Like I've just done it so much that I don't even care. It's like I'm not invested in what I do anymore. Um, which is sad actually, because although I might have sort of gained a sense of peace of mind and stability of mind, my passion has gone. So, like, writing lyrics, it's like, a new song, okay, whatever. But when I used to write songs, I would be so excited about a song. So when I've written a new song, I'd be playing it loads, and I'd be really happy I'd done it in the first place. It'd give me a massive boost of energy. It would be a great feeling to write a song, and then afterwards I'd be like showing people and stuff, and I'd be really kind of pleased with it. And now I'm like, it's a song, big wow song. Well, I've done millions of songs. I've done loads of songs. It's just kind of boring or old, and everything has this kind of similar flavor to it. It's just kind of like, okay, whatever. It's a song. Whereas before, songs were like, oh, so important, whoa. And I miss that feeling of excitement about a new song. And now I'm kind of like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's the most meaningful thing I've ever written, but whatever. I don't care. I don't care, and I want to care. But something is lost. I've lost something inside me about songwriting. Something has died, basically. Everything kind of feels like it. Every song I write actually feels somewhat like I'm doing an exercise, like it's doing a songwriting exercise, like it's part of some fucking. It's not that it's not genuine, but it's forced or something. So the material that I write is genuine. It's about stuff. It's about real stuff and has real feelings to it. But it feels so fucking forced to get there that I have to look for the song. I have to really like either do writing exercises or typing exercises or thinking or whatever. And it's never like the way I used to write songs was I just used to have, I used to be full of these ideas. I used to kind of be playing with words and concepts and ideas and feelings, and I always wanted to translate my inner experience and my ideas about the future or about society or relationships or whatever it was that I was going through or thinking about. I always was thinking about, like, I was always invested in that as a creative thing for making songs and music. My first album has a theme of environmentalism going in there, and there's also stuff about relationships, but it's all like I'm very passionate about that, as in I was very passionate about that when I did it, and now I'm kind of like, yeah, whatever. I feel like I've done everything musically that I have in me, maybe at this point anyway. I mean, I haven't really written anything musically that I'm very pleased with or proud of. Not musically speaking. Lyrically speaking, I'm quite pleased with some of the more recent stuff I've done, but musically, I'm like, yeah, it's all very bland for me. It might be great for people to hear it for the first time, but for me, I'm like, you know, this is not the same as when I was young and fresh and excited about music, and I wanted to express myself and had all these ideas and riffs and stuff coming like teeming, piling, flying out of me. And the thing I'm talking about really is that I was passionate about each one of them. Whereas now, I can write a riff, but it feels more like it feels like something on a not treadmill, but on a production line or something. Yeah, it feels more like on a production line kind of thing. It's like, yeah, I can do it. Okay, what shall I write a song about? This, blah 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 blah. There you go. That's a good song. Okay, but it's not like it's not like it's kind of a fucking passionate thing coming from me that I don't have to plan it, as in like where I actually care about the song and care about it to the point of actually wanting to play it for myself. You know, I was so into my music when I was younger, even up until the age of 30, in fact. I was really, really passionate still about my music. You know, I was trying to create stuff and sort of push my sound into new directions and think of new topics to write about and whatever. And now I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care. And that's a sucky place to be in, because it's like it's not got any juice in it. I care more about my artwork. I'm very invested in my artworks, but not my music. I'm not really even invested in videos either. I just videos, whatever. Videos just kind of go through me like, yeah, whatever. My books, I'm pretty invested in my books at the moment, I guess. But I want them to be over. I feel like I've had enough of book writing, but I need to complete certain things. So I feel like emotionally there's a need to complete them, but I'd rather them have already been completed. You know, it's a bit of a slog, basically. Yeah. So where did that come from? So I did the stand-up comedy thing, yeah. I was big into my stand-up comedy at that time as well. Man, I have lost so much in my life. I've lost so much enthusiasm for life. But have I, though? I think I have and I haven't. I just think that my enthusiasms have changed and gone in different directions. But in a way that's kind of sad, that I'm not enthusiastic about meeting new people anymore either. I'm like, I don't care. And I'm also not really enthusiastic about promoting my work or trying to make my work happen for me. I'm really not. Like, You know, I tried for fucking years. I gave up, I guess. But I haven't given up either, though. Like, something inside me hasn't given up. I just am less passionate, I suppose, and less invested in it, which sucks. Because I don't have that feeling of, well, hey, inspiration and enjoyment of the things that I've done. I feel like my soul has died. Yeah, that's what it is. My soul has died. Oh, God. Oh, fuck. Okay. So now that my soul has died, so one thing I was going to say is that thinking back to those times when I was in War 12, which was okay. I need to, if I can get back to that, I need to bring the story back up to the date. So I came back here after I broke up with my partner. I lived here for a while, and then I went to Reading again because I wanted to finish off my feelings there. My soul had unfinished business. So I went there and bummed around for a while, did some music, did some artwork, did a couple of gigs here and there, did a little bit of work here and there as well. Then I decided I was going to go to America, and the girl in the wheelchair, we were still friends at that point. But I wanted to actually become homeless. So one of the other aspects of this America trip for me was that. So I mentioned in the previous video, you should be watching these in series because otherwise this is really not going to make any sense. um, One of the reasons I decided to go to America was because this author Eckhart Tolle had gone to America when he'd had this spiritual realization or whatever. So I kind of was modeling, not kind of, I was modeling myself on his journey. So one of the things that he did was spend a lot of time in parks, lying on benches or sitting on benches and just sitting in this kind of peaceful state. Now I decided that that's what I should do as well, because I thought that, all right, maybe by doing that I will achieve this enlightenment thing that he was talking about. Even though his enlightenment came first, then he sat around on benches. But I kind of thought, oh, if I sit around on benches, then I'll be enlightened. But didn't really work. I did try the whole sitting on benches thing. It's fucking boring. I couldn't see the point in it. I was like, why am I doing this? I'm sat on a bench for ages. I'm not enlightened. Am I enlightened? I'm looking at my feet. I'm looking at the ground. I'm looking at people around. What? Am I enlightened now? Okay. At some point, you got to go, all right, time to go home then. That worked. Yeah. I just got bored. And what's the point of it? I think the only reason that he could sit on benches for so long was because he was already in this blissful state. But if you're just in a kind of normal state, you sat on a bench, you're like, how long I can't sit on this bench any longer, man. I'm driving myself mad. Like, there's nothing to do. I'm on a bench. What can you do after a while? Just counted the cars going by. I've watched people going by. I looked at my feet, looked at the ground. There's nothing else to do. You just run out of stuff to do, and you go, it's cold now as well. I'm going home. What's the point of this? Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, part of the whole thing was that I was going to go to America because he'd said he'd gone to America. I was going to go sit on benches and be homeless because he'd said he'd been homeless and sat on benches. Yeah. So initially, I tried to get into a monastery. I don't know, why not? I tried to get into a Buddhist monastery. So I contacted like a couple of Buddhist monasteries in America, and they went, no. And I went, why not? And they went, well, are you a Buddhist? Yeah. Uh-huh. No. You have to, I don't know. You had to have been sort of, I don't know how you got into those fucking things, but they said no. And I went, really? Please, please? And they went, no. And I went, oh. And they went, no. And I went, oh, fine. Yeah. Anyway, so this girl, I should call her by her name, but I don't think I should either. So let's call her Mrs. S. Mrs. S. She's the girl from the wheelchair. That's a horrible description, maybe, but that's the only way I can think of her. Mrs. S. We were still talking. She was still my friend, and because she was American, right? I was talking to her about the fact that I wanted to go to America over the phone, and I told her my plan was to go there and become homeless, and she was like, "No, you're not doing it. I won't let you do it. I will tell your parents or something, or I'll tell the authorities." Yeah, she was threatening to tell the authorities and stuff, and she was saying like, "Look, you've got to get yourself a hostel or some accommodation, or I will not let you go, and I'll make it hard for you to go or something." I was like, fuck. So I relented and I decided, okay, fine, I will get a fucking hostel. So I booked a hostel. My mum helped me to arrange the whole thing with the flights and the hostels and stuff. There's even a plan I found in here recently about itinerary and planning for things that could go wrong. Let's have a look at that while we're here. No, let's not. Right. Okay. So I had some money as well, in traveller's checks and a bit of cash. So I went off to America. I sold my car to my mum for £800 to liberate some cash, which was just a way of her helping me to do what I wanted to do. Um, my parents didn't really understand why I was going to do it, but I just said that I had to do it because I wanted to raise consciousness, basically. It was a healing mission. It was something I felt I was called to do, that I needed to do it for the planet and for consciousness as a whole. Um, and that perturbed my dad, especially because he he didn't like the fact that I had these strange reasons. Like, he thought there were strange reasons for going to America, um, but I saw it as being something that would benefit the planet overall somehow. I didn't know how exactly, but that by me going to America, the things I would learn and the healings that I would do when I was there would help the planet in some way. You know, that overall this was going to be a beneficial thing to do. But my dad was concerned because he didn't believe in anything spiritual. So anything like that, talking about intuition or callings and stuff, it just didn't make any sense to him. He argued with me on the fact that I had previously been very passionate about the environmentalism stuff, but then when I went through this personality change, this kind of reassessing of myself, and realizing that most, if not all, of my activities up until that point had been about self-aggrandizement, ego promotion, stuff like that. And I realized, for example, my campaigning wasn't really about helping other people. It was about me trying to be important, about me trying to look good, about me trying to appear to be doing the right thing, about me feeling superior to other people in some way. It was basically more about my own self-image and feeling of myself in a group than it was about what I was trying to achieve, for other people or for the world. You know, it was more about me being a kind of control freak, me being a preacher, um, me meddling, about me meddling with sort of trying to convert people into environmentalism and stuff, and just a bit being a bit insufferable, really. Yeah. So my dad argued with me on the case that the carbon emissions from the aeroplane would be big and bad, and that if, what about the carbon emissions? And I went, well, the work I'll be doing energetically and through or for consciousness as a whole would, it sort of overrules that in a way, or it doesn't matter. And he couldn't understand that. He's like, "Oh, how can you say that?" So, whatever. Yeah. So my dad was very concerned actually about me going to America because he thought that there was something wrong with me already by that point. And I was all about it as a mission, spiritual healing mission, to heal other people's and to other people's, to heal other people, to do something. I just felt like going to America was going to be this journey of healing for other people. That was my intention. There was also this aspect of as well that I wanted to be homeless. I had this. I felt like it was important for me to experience homelessness. I'd been so privileged up until that point, and things had been handed to me on a plate. Like, I got this car given to me. My parents paid my fucking insurance and tax for me. Life had been very easy and set up for me. And I had never had an experience of what I called the reality of life, or the reality of suffering, the hardships of life, right? So I was always like in this kind of middle class bubble where I hadn't experienced anything really going wrong for me or being hard at all, because everything had always been given to me without me having to work for it. And later on, I came to resent my parents a little bit for the fact that, and my gran actually, for the fact that they did give me so much to begin with, because I felt like it really, it didn't give me any perspective on life. And it didn't give me a very good work ethic either. Because if, I can remember actually from quite an early age, if I lost money, then I'd just say to my parents, "Oh, I lost a £5 note," and they'd just give me another one. So you're like, what? How is that teaching a child or a person anything about the reality of loss? You know, you lose the £5, you lost the £5. You know, you fucked up. You got to go earn another one somehow, or create another one, as in, you know, make some value, do some work, whatever, sell something. Not, oh, there you go, there's another one. What? Doesn't teach anyone the value of money, does it? Or the value of work. And I always hated work anyway. I always fucking hated work. I hated the whole concept of work as well. The concept of doing things that other people want you to do that you don't want to do, but that you get money for, even though you wouldn't naturally want to do those things. You have no interest in those things. Whatever it is, you just want the money. And I never really understood that idea. Like, why would you do something you don't want to do just for the money? I couldn't get my head around that. And I was always in resistance to getting jobs and working. Just hated work. Just didn't really matter the job. Any fucking job. All jobs. All jobs. I've always hated jobs. That was a wicked fart. Doesn't smell either. Yet. Wait for it to rise. Yeah, I've always hated jobs. But like, not just casual hate, you know. Very strong feeling that jobs are not good for me. And I've never had a job longer than, my longest job was 8 months. Yeah, longest job, and it wasn't always full time either. No, it doesn't smell. No, okay, fine, we're doing well. Yeah. All right. So I went to America. Okay. So I didn't get into the Buddhist monastery. I got the hostels booked. I had some money. Flew over there on a plane. Got let in. Thought I was going to get busted by the what do you call those people? Check-in people. You know, the parcels? No. Services, checkouts, passport, passport thing, anything to declare, security, customs, right? Fuck's sake, sorry. Parcels. Yeah, I thought I was going to get busted by customers. Busted by customs. 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 Okay, that's enough. Maybe my soul's coming back. Busted by customs. Busted by customs. Busted. Oh, fuck this. I hate my life. I hate guitar. I hate the guitar. Maybe I should get back into drums. Anyway, yeah, so I thought I was going to get busted by the officials at the customs thing. And they looked at my passport and they asked me what my intentions were. What do you intend to do here? I went, nothing. They went, what do you mean, nothing? I went, nothing. Sit around. Look at stuff. They're like, have you got accommodation? I was like, yeah, here's the thing. Here's the booking thing, whatever. And they were like, okay. But they let me in. I thought they were going to say, you can't come in. Or they would search me or something, or drill me even further. But no, they just went, yeah, okay, you can go in. And I was like, yes. So I went in, got to America. I'm in America now, yay! Got on a train, off the airplane. That rhymes. This busted by customs. Got on a train off the plane. Yeah, we were writing a song, the America song. Got on this train, and then immediately there was this subway thing. What am I talking about? There was this dance that these people did, like a busking dance. There was a busking dance on the subway. But it started and they were like clapping their hands really loudly and shouting. And I thought, oh fuck, we're all going to be killed. I've just got to America and it sounded like guns. Like they were banging something as well that sounded like a gunfire and shouting. And I was like, oh god, this is fucking great. I've just got to America and now I'm going to be fucking killed on my first train. And so they did this like loud thing to begin with, and then they went, okay, something like, now we've got your attention. Then they busted into some kind of like breakdancing moves with a rap thing going on and some music in the background. But I was shitting myself. I was like, oh god, I'm about to die. I'm actually about to die. But it was fine. It was just a busking thing. And there were no guns involved. But yeah, that was terrifying. Oh yeah, so I was all by myself, and I didn't have a plan either, other than I'm staying in these hostels. That was my plan. I didn't have an itinerary, as in I wasn't like going to see this or spend time with this person or whatever. Nope. I had booked, I think it was 2.5 months, or 2 months worth of hostel stay. Okay. And that stay was limited, as in that had already been booked, it had already been paid for, and if I wanted to stay longer, I would have to find the money to be able to pay for those hostels. So something happened after 2 months or so, which was that I decided that I wanted to stay longer. I had a visa for 3 months. You get a 90-day visa, or you did in those days, and I had a 90-day visa. Not a working visa, just a visitor's visa. Some of the people in the hostel that I met were trying to encourage me to get a job of some kind. And I did often think about whether I should work in a cafe or something, just get some cash in hand work while I was there, because it would have probably really helped me in terms of my money situation, because my money situation was bad. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, around 2 months in, I decided that I wanted to stay longer, and I wanted to kind of stay until the end of my visa, really, which meant that my hostel ran out, because my hostel had already been booked, remember, for 2 months or whatever. So I overstayed my welcome for one night in a hostel, and then I got basically kicked out because I stayed one extra night in a room, and I don't exactly know how, but they found out, or they just sort of realised as I came downstairs, hey, what are you still doing here? I'm like, and they told me off, and I got kicked out. So that sucked. So I was then homeless, as I had wanted to be. And this was another aspect of it as well. I was really having this kind of I don't know if it was self-destructive or what, but I really wanted to have no support system. I wanted to experience life, yeah, without any support system. I'd had my parents supporting me in one way or another for years and years and years. I had family and friends all around me, which is all good, but I just felt like I I just felt like I'd never been in touch with life. That's all I can say. I'd never had an experience of hardship. I'd never been faced with a real situation where I had to rely on my resources, my own resources, my internal resources. I had never had a situation where it was a real situation, where something was at stake. There was never any stakes in my life, apart from the steakhouse that I worked at. No, there was never any kind of. There's always something to fall back on, basically. Always something to fall back on or to sort of rely on that would pick you up, or if you ruined something, that the parents would pick you up, or your gran would bail you out, or there would be some kind of bailing out, or some way of me not having to face my own decisions fully, or my own feelings fully, or my own situations fully, because there was always a safety net behind me. And the safety net felt kind of restrictive or smothering, or like it was protecting me from the truth of life. And I felt like I had to go into life without a safety net. And I tried to create a situation for myself where there was no safety net, where I would actually have to kind of face life on a bare bones basis, where I was cut off from everyone. I wanted to cut off from everyone and see if I could deal with life, and not rely on other people to help me out, as in people I already knew, like my family or whatever. I wanted to try and have no support system, no safety net. And so I think that probably the skipping of the flight was one of those things that I did to give myself this lack of safety net, because I didn't have the money for another flight. I only had a certain period of time left on my visa, so there was a point at which I would become illegal. It would be illegal for me to stay there, so I'd have to figure something out. I had nowhere to stay. Yeah, and I was trying my hardest not to contact my parents about anything, to not ask them for money, or to not ask for a bailout, because obviously there was always that temptation, although I've created this situation where there is a hell of a lot of difficulty. Yeah. I was really trying my hardest to not like call up my mum and dad and say, "Mum, Dad, I'm homeless. Can you give me some money or whatever?" I really wanted to do this for myself and by myself. And, I mean, in a way, it's not really a full lack of safety net, because there is still a safety net there. But I was trying to create that understanding, or the sensation of there being no safety net. It's a bit like when Princess Jasmine leaves the castle in Aladdin. Maybe that's a bad example. Princess Jasmine, yeah, or the Buddha even. The Buddha leaves his castle because he was born a prince and never really got to see life, or see suffering, and then he goes outside the castle walls or whatever, and sees an old person, a sick person, and a dead person, and an ascetic, I think. So yeah, so it was a bit like that, I really wanted to not be in that castle anymore. I didn't want to be in that fucking place where everything was handed to me. And I was trying my hardest to create this situation where I had to rely on myself, and only myself, and to kind of figure out, well, how am I going to fucking deal with this? Where am I going to go? Where am I going to get money from? I'm going to have to beg now, and I'm going to have to learn pretty fucking fast who to trust, and I'm going to have to just forget about my self concept a lot, because if you need something, you just have to kind of ask, and you cannot afford to have a sense of shame anymore about asking for things. So if you're in a situation where you need money or you need food, you can't afford to sit there going, "Oh, I feel a bit shy about asking this person." You just fucking have to ask everyone you can, and you have to be bold, and you have to be outgoing, and you have to be resourceful to approach people and to be rejected and whatever. And you need to just kind of trust that or I don't know, you need to kind of develop this sense of ruggedness in a way. So I found some couch surfing, some guy from couch surfing. So I couch surfed in his place for like a few days, um, and I did some busking, which, okay, didn't really earn me very much money at all, but it was something. I begged a lot. Um, yeah, I mean, I haven't really gone into the old America fucking trip, and I feel like I'm not really touching on it now properly. I'm still not properly telling the story of America. I'm telling the story of America I'm running through it to try and get somewhere else. um, fuck. There's so much to tell about that fucking situation. Um, yeah. Okay. So yeah, I became homeless, and then, but before that, I had met this girl in a hostel, um, and we created a connection together. She, like, when I'd become homeless after a little while, um, I don't know when exactly, but I called her or she called me, and I ended up going to stay with her down south in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, for a week, I think. Then, so this was financed by my parents, though. This is the thing. Like, I had gone without safety net to some degree, but there was points where I fucking had to bail on it. I had to say, help. I need the help. But that again actually was an experience in itself, to know that actually I cannot do this by myself. That's another part, is to know that feeling and the truth of a situation where then I'm just putting myself through hardship with not necessarily any benefit to it. So I I'm I remember calling my parents from a payphone on the street and crying, I think, telling them that I'd been kicked out of my hostel, um, that I didn't have any money, and I didn't know what I was going to do. But yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, that sucked. And so I believe that they bought the ticket for me or something, and I had to go and pick up the ticket from the Greyhound bus station, the Port Authority bus terminal in New York, to go and stay with this girl. And staying with the girl was horrendous because our relationship was particularly dysfunctional. Um, she was just weird. She said she was a lesbian, but she fancied me, and her most recent relationship was with a guy as well. So that was really strange. Like, her sexual identity was all over the place, and I was trying to sort of bring her to this non-conceptual understanding of herself, but she was very much intent on being a lesbian, calling herself a lesbian. I'm a lesbian. Yeah, but you had a boyfriend and now you're with me, and you're a lesbian. You're not bi. No, I'm a lesbian. Okay, you're a lesbian, right? What's all this sex we're having then? I'm a lesbian. What? I don't know how. You know, I think she was doing gender studies or something as her course at uni. She was at uni. Yeah. Anyway, so I stayed with her, and it was just horrible. And she ended up assaulting me, physically assaulting me, um, and then kicking me out of her place. So that was horrible. So I was homeless again there. Okay, I don't know if I can talk about this anymore. My eyes are going like, woo. Oh man, yeah. So anyway, I came back from America, all Americanized and bolshy and rugged and not willing to take any shit from people, basically, because I'd been through all this stuff and I'd learned who I was. And yet, my parents and the family system in general hadn't changed, or had hardly changed at all. So this rigid family system was still in place, where rigid roles were still in place, and everything was habitual. Relationships were habitual. Conversations were habitual. The same things were being said. The same types of things were being said. The same habits of behavior. The same routines. Mum cooks a meal. At the end of the meal, Dad says, that was delicious, thanks very much. The next day, Mum cooks a meal. Dad eats the meal. Well, we all eat a meal. Dad finishes, says, that was delicious, thanks very much. The next day, Mum cooks a meal. We all eat the meal. Dad eats the meal. Dad says, that was delicious, thanks very much. You know, it just, what? It's just stuck on repeat. The fucking days are stuck on the repeat. The weekdays are stuck on repeat, and then the weekends are stuck on repeat. So the weekend repetition thing was, Mum's down the allotment, Dad's watching the rugby, my brother's in his room, or doing a cycle ride, I suppose. Then Dad's down the gym, then Mum's out dancing, and it's just this lather, rinse, repeat Groundhog Day, just a massive Groundhog Day. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. The amount of times I heard the phrase, or the phrases, the questions, do you want a cup of tea? 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 And then, when I had said yes, and a tea was coming, and I was upstairs, my dad would put the tea on the stairs, you see. So I would kind of come halfway down to pick up the tea, so he could just sort of put it there, halfway up the stairs, like that, on one of the steps, because there's this little gap in the banister thing, whatever. So he puts the tea up there, and he would shout up in the same way every time, "Your tea's on the stairs, Ross." So, tea's on the stairs, Ross. Do you want a cup of tea? Tea's on the stairs, Ross. Do you want a cup of tea? Tea's on the stairs, Ross. Do you want a cup of tea? Tea's on the stairs, Ross. Do you want a cup of tea? Tea's on the stairs, Ross. Do you want a cup of tea? Tea's on the stairs, Ross. Do you want a cup of tea? That was delicious. Thanks. That was delicious. Thanks. Yeah, it was just fucking Groundhog Day, mate. So to come back to that, when I'd been living this wild, free, like very spontaneous and following your intuition and going on this adventure, nothing was set in stone, nothing was habitual, everything was open, everything was random, chaotic. I'd going from one place to another based on a whim. I'd be staying with one person or another based on a whim, and then I come back here and everything is like, it's like coming into a factory or something, and everything is being done in the same way over and over and over again. And obviously I saw that, and I'd never really seen it before. I'd only ever had an inkling of it, so only ever kind of sort of becoming aware of the habitual nature of the family system and the habitual roles that were being played was only ever on the outskirts of my awareness. I sort of knew that Mum was in a lower position than Dad. Dad was an argumentative bully around most things, and he would get people to go with his way of doing things. Like, his decision would always be final. And in that sense, he was a controlling, patriarchal, passive-aggressive, manipulative bastard. Who was very defensive and very argumentative with regard to his view, his ideas, his decisions, his plans for other people were always right. That whole family system dynamic was only ever kind of, I knew, it's like I could sense it was there, but I wouldn't have been able to say what it was or been able to describe it. And I hadn't really noticed how much was on repeat when I came, as in until I came back from America. I mean, I'd already started to figure that out before I'd gone to America, but coming back from America made it abundantly clear that these people were not living at all. I'd been living, okay? I'd been in touch with life. I'd been in touch with the harshness of life. I'd been in touch with the honest truth of life, as in deep, difficult, painful feelings, and also excitement and adventure feelings, where everything was being made up as I went along. So it was a creative, intuitive adventure. And I came back to this stale, monotonous, habitual, life denying routine thing. And it was like my soul was being killed all of a sudden. But my soul was being actively killed as well. So it wasn't just the atmosphere that was killing me. There was an active component to my parents shutting me down. They didn't want to hear about what I'd been through in America. It had been difficult for them here to be at home while I was going off on these adventures and asking for money for tickets and stuff to go here and there, and not coming home when I was supposed to come home. And it had been a real nightmare for them to not know what was going on, because they were always worried and stuff about what I was doing. And they really didn't want to hear anything about what I'd done, which sucks for me and also for them, because if they'd been open enough to listen to what I had to say, I had some amazing stories to tell. I had been to all sorts of places, seen all sorts of people, learned all sorts of things, done all sorts of things, gone on some adventures, and whatever. So, but when I came back, I tried to explain. I told them like one story about this orange that I was given when I was begging, and it was the brilliant, most bestest thing. And I just remember they kind of all just glazed over and pretended like I'd never said it. So that was pretty tough, to have gone on all these adventures and to have had all these stories and had this amazing experience, and to come back and for them to just kind of hush it up, pretend like it had never happened. That was an active thing that they were doing to shut me down and to hush things up and to pretend things and to deny things and to squash my voice. And that was really hard, actually, and I think that probably started to drive me insane, actually. It started to make me think that these people were really not living, that these people were not actually nice people. My parents, I mean, and my gran. That the people who I lived with were dead inside and were actually cruel. And their whole family system was based upon falseness and habitual stuff rather than genuine feelings, rather than being themselves. They were just playing roles and doing the same thing they'd always done, saying the same things they'd always said, behaving in the same ways they'd always behaved. And that was horrible, really horrible, because I'd found myself and was being myself and had found this real rich inner resource um, after having gone through all this. And all of that richness and life energy was being hacked away at, basically, and being almost like I was being punished for having a real experience. Um, and and so it was so stifling here. And I think that that's what started to drive me to do things to communicate with my parents, to snap them out of their behavior, because their behavior was so habitual and in such denial of the reality of life that I felt I needed to do strong things like hiding things around the house, for example, the keyboards, taking the plug out of the TV. I needed to do things to bring them into contact with the truth of their feelings and the truth of their lives that they were not paying attention to. For example, my mum and my dad were activity addicts. They were always doing something or watching something, which means that they never feel how it feels to be alive, for one thing, and they never know what's really going on for them because they're always distracting themselves. So they don't have this kind of inner understanding of themselves, or very limited inner world where they know what they feel they want and feel they like, and they tell the truth about things, and they have an honest relationship. That wasn't there. It was all just this kind of construction that had started way in the distant past, and they'd forgotten even how they got to where they were. And so my parents are always distracted by something. My mum was cooking, my mum was at the allotment, my mum was shopping, my mum was at work, my dad was watching the rugby, reading a book, watching TV, doing work, at the gym, going on a cycle ride. Everything was, it felt like everything they did was a distraction from being alive, from relating to each other, from relating to me, and also kind of trying to avoid noticing life, to avoid noticing their feelings, probably to avoid noticing each other. It was a kind of way of blotting out life somehow. So to be reading all the time, to be watching TV all the time, to be working all the time, to be doing things all the time was actually a way of somehow avoiding life, of avoiding feelings, of avoiding being honest, of avoiding anxiety, of avoiding boredom, of avoiding genuine relationship where you would actually give the other person attention, for one thing. No one gave anyone attention in the family. No one listened to anyone else. Everything was very external focused about what's on TV, what's for dinner, what are we going to do, there's someone's birthday coming up, blah, blah, blah. All about things, objects, never about feelings, desires, understanding, authenticity, nothing like that. So yeah, so I did things that targeted each of those like habits. So the keyboard was to stop them from working, so it would actually make them relate to each other rather than be obsessively work addicted. So both of my parents would bring work home and work at home, as well as working long hours at their work jobs, their day jobs. Then the TV, because they were addicted to TV, so there's always a TV on in the house. Okay, it's still pretty much like that when my mum's in. There's always a TV on. She just kind of can't have it off. It has to be on at all times. There has to be a TV on for her to feel comfortable. It's not, so she doesn't really kind of like use it choicefully. She does sometimes, but it's more like it has to be on. and she's frustrated when it's not on. She just likes it on in the background. And then she will watch like a whole evening of TV as well. Yeah, so she tends to do that to kind of control her feelings or manage her feelings, to deal with stress, to stop her being depressed, stuff like that. But what that means is that if you're addicted to something, anything, you never fully resolve whatever feelings are underneath that, because you're always covering it up with your addiction. So I would unplug the TV to stop, because my dad was also addicted to TV, and therefore people weren't relating to each other. They were only relating through the TV that you were watching. So the discussion would be about what was on TV. It wouldn't be about how are you. Okay, does that make sense? Well, the how are you questioning lasted like 5 seconds, and then it would be about whatever else, And I was always, since I became 18, I think, and probably after the when I came out as gay, from that moment onwards, I became very honest and kind of bare all with everyone, really. I would always say what was genuinely happening, how I genuinely felt, what was really going on for me. So whenever someone asked me how am I would say actually how I am, not just saying, oh, fine, thanks you. Yeah, so whatever. And I decided to, so I hid the keyboards, and I unplugged the TV. What else did I do? Oh yeah, so I would hide my dad's books and his magazines in different places, because just to try and get him out of that addiction, because he was addicted to. He was always pummeling his mind with something or other. And what you find as well is that when you remove someone's ability to fulfill their addiction, it provokes the feelings that have been stored up underneath that addiction. So it was rage mainly for my parents. They immediately went into rage because they'd been covering this rage for so long with activities, that it's like all these activities and stuff that they had, the TV addiction, the work addiction, the activity addiction, whatever, when those were thwarted and you couldn't do them anymore, what was left is like pulling a plaster off a wound. But the wound was always there, and you've just taken the plaster off, and suddenly it's starting to hurt again, because you'd always been plastering it. You'd been constantly, anytime you felt a little bit of it, you'd plaster it over, plaster it over, plaster it over, plaster it over with something else, something else, something else, like that. So what I did was I kind of like pulled their plasters off by disrupting that habitual Groundhog Day routine. And I felt like I had to do that, because it was actually driving me insane to live in such a cold, dead, habituated family. And I positively needed to do that. I needed to shake things up. I needed to break the habits, because you hear that phrase, do you want a cup of tea? Do you want a cup of tea? Tea's on the stairs, Ross. Tea's on the stairs, Ross. And that's just one example of it. The whole system was like that. The whole system was this repetitive, monotonous, ongoing, unchallenged, unquestioned, unself-aware system of monotonous, repetitive habits. The whole of their lives, my parents' lives, were like that, and therefore the family life was like that as well, because the family life was the focal point. First focal point was my dad, then the second one was my mum. So they were like the power figures, and we all related to each other through that system. Yeah, so I played this role of a madman, of a wild card, of a anarchist, chaos provoker, person shaking things up on purpose. And I knew what I was doing, and I knew why I was doing it. But the parents were in such denial, and it provoked such rage in them, that they weren't able to listen to the why, the reasons for why I'd done it. So they were in such denial that they were addicted to TV, for example, or denial that they were addicted to work or addicted to books, or activity. They were in such denial of that, of those behaviours, that all they could see was this mad, evil guy disrupting their lives, which on one hand, I was disrupting their lives, and I was doing it on purpose to try and make a point, to try and bring awareness to their lifestyle and how emotionally unhealthy it was and how frustrating it was for me personally to be in a situation where I wasn't being acknowledged, I was being denied and squashed at every turn. I wasn't given a voice, I didn't have a real say in any decisions in the family. Um, I wasn't allowed to tell my stories. That me telling my story seemed to be a threat to my dad's power somehow. So I would be shut down. So my psychosis was not really a psychosis at all. It was a way I was trying to communicate with my parents about the way they lived their lives, that I couldn't even express it to them simply because there was such denial around it, that I had to express it kind of metaphorically. I had to express it directly by showing them physically that this is the situation. Look, you're addicted to books, you're addicted to work, you're addicted to TV. How do you know you're addicted to TV? Because when the TV can't go on, you get mad for hours. um, and you don't know how to deal with life when there's no TV on, when there's no keyboard, right? But as I say, the communication didn't hit base, or if it did hit base, it's taken a lot of years for it to hit base. It really hasn't sunk in yet. um, yeah. I mean, another aspect as well. So my dad was addicted to sci-fi books. All of these are sci-fi books, okay? So it's like sci-fi and fantasy. And whenever you ask him what he's reading, he would always say, "Oh, escapist trash." Well, why are you reading it then if it's trash? Why are you reading trash? And why are you so kind of negative about what you're reading, and yet you lap it up? So that's weird. That's a contradiction, isn't it? Doesn't make any sense. It's an inconsistency. Like, what's that all about? You don't like it, but you have to read it. You're addicted, obviously. But so my dad would also go into bookshops occasionally with the idea that he would go and get something that he wouldn't normally read, and he'd come out with a science fiction book. He'd come out with a sci-fi book. He'd be like, "What do I not normally read? I know, science fiction." Yeah, and like, so the guy's a mentalist. Was a mentalist. What do I not normally read? I know, the same thing I do read all the time. Yeah. Okay. So, so I tried to shake things up. And oh yeah, I was saying that the communication didn't really hit base, as in it didn't connect with them because I just got so mad. I couldn't actually explain to them why I was doing it. Because the fallout around these actions was so big. Who knew how maddening it would be to have unplugged the TV and to have like hidden the plug somewhere? Who would know how maddening it would be to take the keyboards and hide them somewhere so they can't use the computer? Fucking hell, oh no. So, but it didn't connect and didn't work, and so all that happened was that my parents just thought that I had gone mad, and they couldn't see past the action to hear out why I had done it. And so it was like talking to a fucking massive angry brick wall. So again, this psychosis thing, it really wasn't anything to do with a mental state to begin with. It was to do with me trying to show my parents and communicate with my parents how negative they were, I guess, and how addicted they were to various things. Um, I think there was a point later on where you could call it psychosis. What happened was just one word for it. I would prefer to call it spiritual revelation, but from the outside and in a medical analysis, it would be called psychosis. But for me, it was, I wouldn't have called it psychosis. I would have called it being in touch with God, having psychic impressions, stuff like that, an intensification of creativity and meaning. But it didn't start off in that way. It started off as me trying to communicate my frustrations about being neglected and abused and abandoned and unheard and unseen and uncared for and unlistened to in my family, and trying to communicate how cold and barren the family environment was by shaking it up and doing something, because I felt I couldn't actually talk to these people because they wouldn't listen. Yeah, so I think that honestly, if my parents had been more willing to look at themselves and to evaluate their own responses to how I was behaving, like as in to sort of figure out what I was trying to say, or to even bother to listen to me without arguing against me, to actually hear out my point of view, to listen to my stories, to accept me for who I was, that if they had done that, that potentially that might have stopped any of the further psychosis symptoms from happening. But because they didn't, because they just denied me and pushed me away, I kind of felt like I had to go to more and more extremes just to connect with them, because they're in such denial of themselves and of their feelings and of their emotions and desires and their truth and whatever. They're in such denial against honesty that I felt like I had to start shouting and doing more and more strange things just to get a real response, I suppose. Yeah, so that gives you a bit of an understanding as to like why my parents started thinking that I had a mental health problem, and my perspective on that. Okay, so it's so fine. Everyone thought that I had a mental health problem, but they don't really know why I behave like that from my internal sort of compass or internal reasons. And they would have said, and probably still would say, oh, that's just the result of a mad way of thinking, rather than looking at, okay, well, how are they behaving? Because I am trying in that situation as this psychotic person, what I'm actually trying to do is trying to communicate with them on a deeper level, and they are not willing to look beyond their habitual limited mind, like their habitual thinking about things and their habitual way of doing things. So yeah, so I suppose I'm trying to give you some context as to like why I got sectioned in the end anyway, like why the mental health team became involved. I mean, I think honestly that they should have been focusing on my parents rather than on me. I was the focal point because I was the loudest and the most sort of the one who was acting out the most, but the family system itself as a whole, me included, was dysfunctional. The chaos was family chaos. It wasn't just my chaos. It was I was behaving in a response to the family's denial and the family's rejection of themselves, of emotion, of present moment awareness, of self-awareness, of truth. And I don't mean a specific truth, I mean the truth that bubbles up from within. So, yeah, there you go. And I got sectioned eventually, because after a while it was like not even about the communication of something anymore. It was just about the nightmare of being trapped in this situation where everyone was insane. And so it became violent because I was still trying to snap my dad out of being so belligerent and strong-minded and very controlling. He was trying to stop me from giving away my own things. So I slapped him and I got arrested. And I don't think I got a section that time. But the next time I slapped him was when he was trying to again control and manipulate a situation whereby he'd got hold of my passport against my will and was withholding it and was lying about it. So I slapped him because I was trying to sort of get through to him or something. I don't know. And got arrested, got sectioned in the morning at the police station, got sent to hospital with a view to treatment for psychosis. So I'd already been sectioned a previous time and got into hospital once for that. Yeah, man, my fucking head is spinning from all this shit. So it's a long video. I've got the story back to the point of being in Ward 12. Man, but I'm telling more and more details. You know, I'm telling a lot of different things. I didn't realise just how much I have to go over this. I have to go over it more and more. There's more stuff in the America thing to talk about. Oh, God. Yeah, I can keep talking about this over and over again, and I still feel like nothing of the whole story has been given full justice. I don't think the relationship with Charlie has been given full justice. Maybe the relationship with Andrea has been given full justice by now, but the relationship with Charlie hasn't. The America hasn't. My life at uni hasn't. It still feels kind of alive, basically, inside me, as though it needs to be honoured. God, so annoying. Anyway, there you go.